Hi, I'm Patricia Allingham Carlson, and this is my video of how I painted my watercolor, Long May You Run. My beloved dog passed away last week, and painting her in watercolor was a way that helped me to process my sadness at losing her. She was a small dog in size, but nothing else about her was small. Her boldness, her joy, her love for her family, and how fast she could run. She was just awesome. Long may you run, Zoey. Now let's paint. I began with a sketch. This was based on a photograph taken by my friend Stacy. I cleaned up the edges, and then I began to paint in with water all around the figure of the dog. I was using mostly long dashes. I was trying to show the texture of grass because my dog was running in the grass across the lawn. The top of the photograph was lit up with the sunlight, and then some patchy sunlight was showing throughout the rest of the picture. So I began with yellow. This is cadmium yellow. Next, I came in with some Hooker's Green light and some sap green. I'm painting all in dashes that I had wet down with water, long vertical dashes. The grass was very blurry in the background and became much more vivid and defined as we moved toward the foreground. Next, I'm bringing in some cobalt blues. The interesting thing about this photograph, in addition to the joyful appearance of the little dog running through the grass, was that there were some sun flashes caught, and these appeared very purple. So I decided to go ahead and paint them. I'm using some Winsor Violet, and I'm using some different shades of blue. I'm also coming in with indigo mixed with Hooker's Green dark. I made a quick decision to add some masking to mask out some shine marks on her eyes, her teeth, and her nose. What I was hoping for with this approach to the background was that the texture would remain but blurry in the background, and that I could bring it out later into the foreground by using the wet on wet approach. Some of these purple sun flashes actually appeared on the dog's body as well, and I decided to go with it. She was a very cool little dog, and purple's a very interesting and cool color. And this painting was really for her. The patch of yellow in the mid foreground is where there's some sun shining through the tree branches onto the grass and lighting it up in that area. So I was planning ahead to include that. My next step was to come in with the brush and start to show where her ears and her tail back behind her touch into the background. I'm doing a little bit of overlap so that her body will completely cover the background and make it feel like it's in front. My challenge at this point was how to paint a very black dog and use the highlights of her fur and show them without making her appear to be any color but black. So the colors I'm using for this particular part of the challenge are Payne's Gray, Indigo, Purple, mixed in with some sepia or sepia perhaps it's pronounced. In some areas I'm using ultramarine blue, and in some areas I'm using more purple. If I used a pure black like lamp black, the color wouldn't have been quite as interesting, because in black we can see some other colors, especially when light is shining on it. And there was a lot of purple in this particular photograph. I'm using my black in layers. I'm putting down the color, and then I'm washing it out with water to blend. At this point, I'm marking where the dominant hair designs are and how the hair is actually laying on the body, or in this case, flying backward in the wind as the little dog runs so fast. And to be honest with you, I never saw a dog run as fast as my Zoey ran. Nobody could catch that dog unless she wanted to be caught. And she knew it, and she was very proud of that. This is a long-haired breed, a Pomapoo. And she had to be groomed on a regular basis, but her hair grew out very long in between groomings. And it was very fluffy and feathery. So it was an interesting challenge painting that on the areas of her where she is longer furred. It was a matter of finding the lighter colors in the fur and painting them in with a light gray, a blend of my different colors of black making without using black, and then putting in the lines and the direction of the longer furred areas. And there was a lot of buildup of color to get darker and darker. At this point, I'm mostly marking in how her body curves around and where the lines of it are, as well as where the fur lines would go. And in order to keep it soft looking, I'm using a lot of water to blend. This is the first purple sun flash area on the dog's body. And I'm not quite sure how I'm going to pull it off, except to go with what I see in the photograph. So I'll be learning as I continue painting. The area around the dog's mouth and nose don't look exactly correct to me, but I'm trying to get them marked in and figure I will do some adjustment later once I take the masking off the teeth and the lip. There's a small patch of a lighter color around each eye, so I'm planning ahead and trying to leave that lighter so I can then fill in later with gray to all the dark blacker colors that are going around the rest of the dog. And I continue to try to find the anatomy of how the dog's face is built, her muzzle, how to show it coming forward, and show the body going backward in space. I'm adding numerous layers of my dark black mix to build up where she is truly dark and in shadow. But most of her body is actually shining in a lot of strong light and shows a lot of the gleam of the fur. Here's my second sun flash area, where her whole cheekbone was lit up with a very purple sun flash color. And then there was another flare on her right flank. It was sort of hard to see in the picture how her chest was and how her legs were moving in the space. But I also figured that the grass coming up in front would be sort of forgiving of any anatomy that I didn't get exactly right. The picture had her running so fast she was almost a blur. So I sort of let that happen in my painting too. I'm painting in my edges, I'm painting in my purples, and then I'm blending them outward with water, or in some cases, other colors that they're going to be fading into. This paw that's moving forward in space is actually very, very covered up by the tall grass on her small body. So I'm finding my way as I paint in this particular painting. The long hair on the ears and around the top of the head were one of the easier areas for me to paint, because all I had to do was follow the direction of the fur and then shade it. Working around her eyes and her face required a lot more attention to get it right. So first I mark out where everything is supposed to go, and then I darken it. Then last I will do some blending. As I blend, I always try to move my brush in the direction that the hair is actually growing. And I think that helps to add a naturalness to the blending. I figure I need to paint all around the front of her muzzle and her nose and her mouth before I remove the masking and get it straightened out to make sure it's anatomically more correct. My reference picture was not all that clear, and that was part of the problem I had. And I wanted to get my little dog right. I paint in the eyes. The poodle part of this dog had her eyes very brown. The surrounding area, where the shadows are, I'm using my black mix. And adding another layer of darkness to her far haunch and working outward from her head to the rest of her body. And down into the chest area where that purple sun flash is. Defining and going, and now I'm taking off the masking so I can make some adjustments. You could see the areas around the eyes, the nose, and the mouth where the masking has now been removed. And now I can work on that nose and getting it just right. I had to get the correct slant, I had to get the sides shaded, and show how the front and top came forward. I also had to locate the nostrils correctly. And then I had to relocate them, but I got them right eventually. What you're seeing me doing is adding water and then blotting it off with the color so I could make adjustments in the angle. Next, I'm moving on to the mouth. I'm painting the black gums around the teeth and then the bottom side of the muzzle above the mouth. And that certainly did define that whole area a lot better. At this point, I could feel it was looking more like the dog, and I felt better about the painting. Next, those eyes. The white that I painted, or the masking I painted around the eyes, made them appear far too light around them, so I had to tone it down and make it look like fur. So I'm adding another layer of darks around that area and then blending it outward with water so it's not such a harsh white line. Moving back to the eyes, I add another layer of darkness. And I move back to the fur around the muzzle to try to correct that. I decided I wanted her right side to stand out more, so I'm darkening next to it in the background. I'm also bringing a touch of color, as in purple, up into the hair on the top of the head, just to balance some of the purple that is below. I'm breaking the line around the jaw, and I'm also adding some patterns for her collar, which only shows in the shadows, but does have a pattern on it. I decided to paint it because I thought it would add something nice to her. I'm darkening my purples as I go as well. And here I'm lightening the right side of her body a little bit by removing some color, by blotting and adding water. This is giving me the highlights that I want. And a lot more adjustment all around the dog. I also have begun softening the edges of her fur with water. And I'm adding another layer of black, my black mix, for accent. A little more brown for the eyes as well. Adding that strong dark really does begin to make the light stand out nicely. Time to work on the foreground. This is the grass that is coming up in front of the dog. The way the photograph captured it was interesting. Some of the grass was in a blur, and some of the grass was very clearly delineated. So I started with the blurry stuff, and then I did add some more clearer blades of grass individually a little later. In some areas, the dark black fur is showing through the grass, and I'm trying to make sure I show that coming through. But then we get to the point where all of her fur and the rest of her body is hidden. I've left some areas that are very light and very blurry in the foreground as well. And now I'm softening with water. Going back to the painting, I'm making some final adjustments here. I'm adding more darks, more accents. Working on breaking the jawline, which felt a little too hard to me, and softening it. Darkening the area around the nose and making it more clear to try to make the nose muzzle part appear to come forward. And darkening the eyes again. Here you see me breaking some of the edges. I'm signing my painting and I'm saying goodbye yet again to my dog. I hope you enjoyed watching my video of Long May You Run. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you did. If you ring the bell below, you'll be sure to get a notice for any future videos so you won't miss any. There's some links below you can click on to see my art page on Facebook, some products that I like to use, as well as my art product page for purchase. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.